buen día. Vamos a hablar, voy a hablar, ustedes van a escuchar, de los usos de se y los adverbios. Entonces vamos a hablar de dos asuntos gramaticales de lección punto 10.3, lección 10.4. Bueno, los usos de se. Okay, so you already know that we have used se in many different ways. We first started this semester learning se as a reflexive pronoun, un pronombre reflexivo, like bañarse, levantarse, acostarse, dormirse, maquillarse, afeitarse, etc. So things like you've seen it as like ella se baña, o los niños se levantan temprano. Okay, some other examples is Maribel se maquilla antes de irse. Okay, so we've seen se used with reflexives. Then we saw how se replaces either le or les, the indirect objects pronoun le or les, before they come in front of the direct object pronouns lo, la, los, or las. So for example, ¿le diste la medicina a Ana? Sí, se la di. So did you give the medicine to Ana? Yes, I gave it to her. And the se was replacing the le, which was referring to Ana. ¿Nos va a recetar algún medicamento? Sí, se lo va a recetar. So is he or she going to prescribe us some medicine? Yes, he or she is going to prescribe it to y'all, all of you. Okay, so that would replace, in our answer, we would normally use les, but we know we can't have les and lo together, so les changed to se. Now, what's new, although you've probably seen it, are expresiones impersonales y pasivas. For example, you may have seen something like se habla español aquí. Okay, or maybe you've seen something like se vende or se venden. Okay, for example, in esta farmacia se vende penicilina. So in this pharmacy, penicillin is sold. Or se habla español aquí, Spanish is spoken here. Or you could say someone speaks Spanish here. Okay. Se necesitan enfermeras, so nurses are needed. Okay. Or whoever it is needs nurses. Okay. Se hablan inglés y francés aquí, so English and Spanish are spoken here. So we use that with these impersonal, not that they're interchangeable, but also passive voice expressions, like nurses are needed being the passive voice. Okay. And another use of se is when we have an unplanned occurrence or an event. Like al señor Rodriguez se le perdieron las llaves. So señor Rodriguez lost his keys. But literally you're not saying that. Okay. Also, we have a los niños se les olvidó la tarea en casa. So the children forgot their homework at home. But in Spanish, it is not the person that did the things. Instead, the things did it to themselves, and that person was indirectly affected, which is why we see the indirect object pronouns. Therefore, it's actually a reflexive with an indirect object pronouns. So to say, I forgot my keys, you literally have to say, basically, the keys forgot themselves. I like this. It's never our blame. It's never our fault. Blame is not on us. So the keys forgot themselves, and I was indirectly affected by it. So se me olvidaron las llaves. So se olvidaron las llaves is kind of like the keys forgot themselves. And who was affected? Me. Se me olvidaron las llaves. Okay, so if we look at an activity like this, like, ¿qué pasó? And it says, mira los dibujos e indica lo que pasó en cada uno. So we see camarero and we see el pastel. Okay, so we have al camarero se le cayó el pastel. Now the camarero, remember, is the indirect object. And when we actually state that object and it's a person, we have the a. And so a and el contract to al camarero, se le cayó el pastel. And it's cayó because pastel is singular. So here we have Señor Álvarez and espejo. So take a moment and see if you can figure out what that statement is. You can pause if you need to. Okay. Al señor Álvarez se le rompió el espejo. Okay, so the mirror broke. It broke itself. Wasn't my fault in Spanish. But I was affected by it. Okay. Or I should say I, señor Álvarez, was affected by it. So al señor Álvarez se le rompió el espejo. Okay. So go ahead and pause the video and see if you can do Arturo en Tarea, Señora Domínguez en llaves, Carla y Lupe con botellas de vino, and Juana y los platos. So pause the video and see if you can come up with those 6 statements to state what happened. Okay, welcome back. Let's go through número 3. A Arturo se le olvidó la tarea. And when we mention a name, remember we don't have to have that el or la in there when we mention a first name. So a Arturo se le olvidó la tarea. A la señora Domínguez se le perdieron las llaves. A Carla y a Lupe se les cayeron y se les rompieron las botellas de vino. And we have to have the a in front of each person. So a Carla y a Lupe. Se les because of a Carla and a Lupe. Cayeron because it's las botellas de vino. And se les rompieron, les because of Carla and Lupe, and rompieron las botellas. A Juana se le cayeron y se le rompieron los platos. And so that's very similar. But it's le because of a Juana. But it's cayeron because of los platos and rompieron because of los platos. Now let's imagine instead, número 5, instead of it Carla y Lupe, let's say it was Carla y yo. How would you change that? A Carla y a mí se nos cayeron y se nos rompieron las botellas de vino. And let's say that instead of Juana y los platos in número 6, that we have tú. How would that change? A ti se te cayeron y se te rompieron los platos. Okay. So I hope that makes a little bit better sense. Now I'm just going to continue in one video and talk about los adverbios, which was the last grammatical point. You know many adverbial expressions and adverbs, things like a menudo, a tiempo, a veces, además, apenas, así, bastante, casi, con frecuencia, de vez en cuando, despacio, menos, muchas veces, poco, por lo menos, pronto y rápido. Okay? So you know some adverbs or adverbial expressions, but how do we exactly form some adverbs? Okay? The most common adverbs end in mente, which is the equivalent to the English li. So things like verdaderamente, which is like truly or really, generalmente, which is generally, simplemente, which is simply. Now, one thing to pay attention to, atención, is when a sentence contains 2 or more adverbs in a sequence, the suffix is dropped from all but the last adverb. Okay, so for example, el médico nos habló simple y abiertamente. So he spoke to us, the doctor spoke to us simply and openly. Okay, so if you notice, simplemente became simple. Because we actually form an adverb by starting off with the adjective, and we need the feminine form of the adjective. Now, if an adjective typically ends in an O, we know it has a feminine or a masculine singular, a feminine singular, a masculine plural, and a feminine plural. We want to start off with that feminine form. So something like seguro, we want to start off with segura. Fabuloso, we'll start off with fabulosa. Things like inmediato, we'll start off with inmediata. Okay. And then we add mente, seguramente, fabulosamente, inmediatamente. But ones that end in E, like enorme, inteligente, interesante, then we're going to just add mente to the end, like enormemente, interesantemente, inteligentemente. Fácil, so ones that end in a consonant, it's going to be fácilmente. We just add the mente to the end. Difícilmente. Okay. Adverbs that end in mente generally follow the verb, while adverbs that modify an adjective or another adverb precede the word they modify. And we see that something like, okay, they modify another adjective. For example, like muy alto. The muy is going to come before alto. Muy rápido. The muy again will come before the rápido, being the adverb. Okay, so I hope that makes a little bit more sense for you, and we will practice more in class.